So first of all, welcome all to the very first Firestation Fundamentals Webinar Series. This is of course free, and it's thanks to our partner, the Rotorua Lakes Council. We took them the idea a couple of weeks ago, and they jumped on board, and so this is going to be our first, but certainly not our last one. So just as people join, we'll just let them join the call, and we'll just keep going. So yeah, so if you keep yourself muted, that would be ideal. But there is a chat window. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, there's a chat function, and you can just click on it, and you can be able to ask questions which everyone can see, or you can ask questions directly to one of us. Probably, given I'll be doing most of the talking, maybe perhaps ask Rachel. So just welcome to Rachel as well, who's our co-founder and director at Firestation. Hello. Yeah, so chat window is the best way to ask questions, but if you want to pop your hand up and ask a face-to-face question, a verbal question, don't hesitate. It's relatively informal, and yeah, it's going to be okay to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question at all. We're all this is all brand new, and none of us know what we're doing. So except for these top 10 tips, of course. So what else do you need to know? Yes, you're welcome to leave your camera on or off. Entirely up to you. There's a few of you got it on, a few of you got it off. Whatever works. Yeah, there's no need otherwise to keep it on if you don't want to. In fact, it may be easier on your internet connection to keep it off if you're struggling for Wi-Fi, because you've got 3 teenagers in the house like us, and they're all gaming at the moment. So in fact, if anything goes wrong with our technology, it's one of our teenagers, or all of them is at fault. It's not us. What else do we need to know? Yeah, so we're going to cover questions. Anything? Have I missed anything, Rachel?
No, all good to start.
Yeah, covered with our partners, yep. So what we thought we'd do for the first one is our top 10. So there's no particular reason why it was 10 tips, but it was just a case of when we started getting questions from clients that we realised that there was some common responses to things. I should start off by saying that our business is affected as well. We've been able to transition a number of our workshops and training and our one-on-one coaching to this sort of a forum, but we've had clients postponing, we've had clients cancelling, we've lost some significant work, or at the very least we're hoping it's placed on hold. And we've got a reasonably large 200 square metre office space in the CBD of Rotorua, which is currently paying rent on and not being able to utilise. So we do empathise and we feel your pain. And I'm going to recommend this again, but of course, if you haven't already, reach out to your professional advisors, such as your accountant or your lawyer, or maybe a business mentor or a coach, or someone like us, or even just another business owner, because even just talking to each other can be valuable at the moment, from a mental health perspective, which is something I'm going to talk about. If you've got any suggestions for future calls, let us know. Just drop it in the chat, send us an email, Facebook, whatever works. Yeah, we've got an idea of what we want to cover, but if there's something more pressing, then we're happy to work that in. Okay, so I've got some notes in front of me, so apologies if my head drops down. It's just me referencing my notes. I have gone through this a couple of times previously, but it's always good just to make sure I'm talking about the right thing. All right, so tip number one, trusting the right sources of information. Now, we put this in here a couple of weeks ago because it was clear on social media that there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of potentially weird and wonderful things you can do to keep yourself healthy, or even heal yourself from COVID-19. But certainly there's websites that you can rely on for the right advice. And I'm not going to run through them. We've put links out, and we'll probably do again. And lots of other people have put these links up. But there's a lot of government sites, so things like business.govt.nz, work and income for wage subsidies. I'll come to that in a moment. Employment.govt, tax relief at ird.govt. Ministry of Health, so health.govt, so all of these, and even good old COVID-19.govt. So I guess the suggestion is at least maybe once a day, check those sites, see if anything's changed and updated. We are fortunate that we live in a country where we're being fed a lot of information. I just happened to catch the closing comments from the Minister of Finance earlier today. And but with a lot of information comes a lot to process, and also because the situation is so fluid, we get an announcement from a minister, but then kind of the devil is in the detail, and that's where these sites is where the detail is. So bookmark them in your browser and check them from time to time. I also just want to note too, EMA, the Employers and Manufacturers Association, whom we have a partnership with, they've also opened up all of their 0800 advice lines. So if you need any HR advice, and that is going to be the topic of our next one, then you can contact them for free and get some really good practical advice on what to do with your employees at the moment. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, if you haven't applied for the wage subsidy, you should. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you have, and if you haven't, it's probably because either your business hasn't dropped 30%, or revenue hasn't dropped 30%, or you can't put your hand on your heart and realistically you expect it to drop 30%. But really, this is something that the government is trying to do to keep the economy moving. No way do we want to advocate for anyone to undertake a fraudulent application, but certainly it is there. If you're a startup, if you don't really have much of a track record, and then you should still be applying for it. And certainly anyone with employees and who thinks their revenue is going to be challenged should absolutely apply. If you do have questions around it, just check with your accountant or some sort of financial advisor in the first instance, because they can maybe give you a bit of clarity. But yeah, it is there. Rachel was saying earlier on today that there might be another announcement later this week around what other support might be coming out for businesses. For us paying commercial rent, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Maybe it's a subsidy for that. But yeah. So
just on the wages subsidy, just be aware that there are two subsidies. So there's the wage subsidy, which is for any businesses that has had at least a 30% revenue loss, or has a predicted revenue loss. So just in case, you might be tracking on really well this year compared to last year. And so your forecast from February to June is a lot higher than what your 2019 figures are. If you can hand on heart say those were what you were planning to reach, then you can use those as the basis for the 30% revenue reduction. The other one is the leave subsidy. So if you doesn't matter what you're trading at the moment, if you have staff that cannot work because they're immunocompromised or they've got vulnerable people in their home, they have to self-isolate, whatever the case may be, that leave subsidy is eligible for any business to cover those wages for those people up to the same limit as the wages subsidy. So just a distinction between those two.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And like with the rest of the information, get some advice, check with EMA, check with your HR advisor, because although we are operating in a high degree of uncertainty, it still pays to get professional advice. Okay, number 3, cash flow for the next, well, we had down here originally 30 days, but it's we're 2 weeks in and counting, so, or 3 weeks in. So what do you do about your cash flow? Because as we all know, cash flow is the lifeblood of the business. So this is about understanding what is my liquidity or cash position. And in this regard, an Excel template where you just Google something like cash flow forecast, and you'll get like 1,000 different, or probably 1 million different templates you just download. And this has usually come about, you know, in the pre this crisis, where you're applying for a bank for funding. But it's something that I would always recommend to any business to do, is to do a regular cash flow forecast. So how would you go about doing this in this situation? Well, the first thing to do would be to go through your debtors and creditors, and starting with the largest, and say, okay, so the debtors are the people that they owe us, obviously, right? We've issued an invoice and money outstanding, and applying some sort of probability or even an estimate, a really conservative estimate of how much cash do we expect in from those debtors, from largest to smallest. And then, and that gives us an idea of what cash we expect in. Now, when you do a forecast, normally it's on a month-by-month basis. It's cash in and cash out each month. But given the situation we're in, it's probably more relevant to do that weekly for at least the next few weeks, unless your business is, trading as normal. So it's what cash do I expect in from those debtors? And then, of course, if we can trade in some way, or are able to trade, what am I expecting to receive from that over the next few weeks? With your creditors, then the situation is going through it from largest to smallest, saying, okay, what is an absolutely essential cost, and then what is potentially discretionary? And then what is essential may depend on how long this thing lasts for, because what's essential for a 4-week lockdown may not really be, sorry, it's the other way around. So something that's, you might have costs, you go, look, if this lasts for 4 weeks, I'm okay with this cost, but if this goes on for 12 weeks, there's no point me continuing to pay this cost. So it's starting to sort of go through and assign those, and therefore in your forecast, working out with each expense, when do I have to pay them, and then when and if can I axe these as well. So the other good piece of advice is to talk to each of those suppliers, because if they're New Zealand based, and they're in, anywhere actually, if they're based anywhere, we're all in a very similar scenario. So ask them for help. If you've got premises, talk to your landlord. That's what we've done. Talk to your bank, and I'll come to banks in a moment. But just go through. If you're spending a bunch of money on a whole lot of software apps, contact them. Ask them, for a month, 2 months, 3 months sort of subsidy, whatever, whatever to get through. So from there, you can kind of work out what is my weekly, therefore, cash burn rate. In other words, how much cash am I going to burn through each week just to keep things going? And then that'll help you work out how long the business can continue. And then also work out, kind of what a sort of roughly is my break even in that regard. But these are going to be all scenarios, because we just don't know. So that's why I think it's important to not just do one, maybe look at a couple, look at a worst case 12-week lockdown, a best case, we're all out of this level 2 from the 23rd of April, or somewhere in between. I had a client comment recently that a couple of years ago, they put aside a rainy day fund of 1 month's revenue, which they thought was a little excessive at the time, but they'd been through the GFC, and they thought that this was, they were quite profitable, and it'd be pragmatic. And now in retrospect, they wish they'd put aside even more than 1 month, perhaps even 2 or even 3 months. And I think that's going to be a bit of a learning for a lot of businesses going forward. Okay, banks, tips for engagement.
Can I just, there's been a few chats about the wage subsidy and the leave subsidy. So you can't apply for both. And the leave subsidy for general businesses and non-profits has been absorbed into the wages subsidy. What is available as a leave subsidy is for those essential workers. So those are for the businesses that are still operating, haven't had a loss of income, but have staff that can't work because of either themselves or vulnerable people in their household. So hopefully that answers everyone's question on that. If you've applied for the leave subsidy, the wages subsidy, you then cannot apply for the leave subsidy. That covers the whole 12 weeks. Cool. Sorry, Darren.
Oh yeah, I do have a question just to me. The question is, if I see projected revenue dropping, but there is a time lag, it's to do with the wage subsidy, dropping in May, July. Look, I think that's going to be okay at the end of the day, because they want to keep as many people employed as possible. So if applying for the wage subsidy means you can keep people employed, then that should be fine. And I really can't see a scenario where Inland Revenue or someone else is going to go through a data matching exercise and requesting that, I don't know, Xero hands over your monthly trading for this year versus last year, and then compare. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be more about looking for those people who took the wage subsidy and then consequently got rid of their staff and just kept the money. I think that's going to be more important. So hopefully that answers that question.
And on the wages subsidy, the final thing, if you're not aware, the government is publishing every business that receives a wage subsidy and for how many employees that they've received the wage subsidy for. So that's so that if people are working for an organisation and they don't get the wage subsidy passed on to them, they can then double check to see whether their employer got it. So there is a high expectation of trust in this model, but there are ways for both employees and employers to check that things are being done correctly.
Oh, and the other thing I didn't mention too is if you haven't paid yourself an actual PAYE wage, then do talk to your accountant or an HR advisor. But if you take it normally like a shareholder salary or drawings or something, then I would just apply anyway, because we need to have income ourselves as business owners. All right, your bank. So we just had a couple of banks on a call this morning, and so this is quite topical, and we will be getting them back as well for this series of calls. So what are the tips? So some of you know that I used to work for a bank. I was a managing partner, which is kind of like a regional manager. This is a few years ago now, but banks don't really change. So anyway, so I've had a bit of a look into this. So whichever bank you're with, each of them, and I've gone through them, each bank has some sort of page dedicated to assistance. They've usually broken the page into personal versus business assistance. As a business owner, you're probably looking at both in that regard. If you can, go directly to your business banker or the local branch manager if you're managed out of their retail sort of team. And if you don't get what you need and it's not happening fast enough, then go take it up to the next level. I mean, I will preface that add on saying that they are under a lot of pressure in terms of particularly the number of applications for people to take their loans interest only and things like that. So a normal response time probably isn't to be expected. But if you still feel like they're dragging your feet in their near, don't hesitate to raise it. There's a lot of pressure on the banks to step up in the current environment. So do that. You're going to need to probably pull some information together. So if you're not familiar with that, again, talk to your accountant or talk to someone like us who we can help, and that can be paid for, but I'll mention that at the end. It's not usually a lot. It's usually your historical financials, and given we just rolled over the end of the year, that should be just hopefully you've reconciled already, and it's just a print and send. But then it's that forecast piece that I've already talked about. You will need to provide some sort of forecast, which you should do anyway from a business point of view, even if you don't need money from the bank. Now, in terms of what they can approve, the easiest thing probably is some sort of, if you haven't got an overdraft, a temporary overdraft or an increase in your existing overdraft limit. They also said this morning that going interest only, in other words, not having to do principal repayments at the moment, are the easiest things that they can just approve, or their bankers can, without having to go to a sort of a higher authority. So that's what I'd be asking for in the first instance. Beyond that, then you can start extending your loan terms. So if you're paying something off faster than you'd have to, then you can push that out again. Or in the worst possible case, you can consider a repayment holiday where interest and principal is deferred. but it is only that. It is deferred. It is not magically erased. In fact, because interest is normally calculated on a daily basis, if you're not paying at least interest regularly, then you're going to be paying interest on interest, and that will add up very, very quickly. But if that's the only way of keeping the business afloat, then it, possibly worth considering. The other thing is each bank seems to be looking at their fees and looking at waiving different fees in different scenarios. So if you're paying a significant fee, couldn't hurt to ask for some sort of waiver, at least in the short term. And then the last thing is that, of course, the government is providing a guarantee for special loans, where they'll stand behind 80%, but this is only in a default. So you still have to repay the money. You can borrow it. You've got 3 years to repay it. But if you can't, and the business, for whatever reason, can't repay it and it collapses, then the government will stand behind it. But you still have to repay it, and it's still subject to normal lending criteria, i.e. that you were able to demonstrate prior to this that you could have repaid the money. So it is a bit challenging. It's not just simply go and apply for it and you're going to get it. So overall, each bank will have to work within their normal lending policies. Just before I move on, any questions? No real questions on banks? No. We're going to bring a couple of banks on later on, and it might be worth dialing into that one as well. Okay, tip number 5: business planning. If you do have some downtime, or even if you don't, I suppose it's a good opportunity to do some business planning, particularly for the medium term. Asking you questions like, how sustainable is my business model, either now or in a changed world, or in a significant recession, or even potentially depression. Am I exposed to industries that are going to be affected by border closures, such as tourism and hospitality and accommodation? With the benefit of hindsight, is there anything I can be doing to improve my business's resilience? What can I do to generate other forms of revenue? And I'll come to that in a moment as well. And there's a ton of templates out there, and we certainly give out a few with our programs. But it is an opportunity to be planning. It may be that you were considering some strategies, and for whatever reason you were too busy to just get to them. But now could be the time to actually accelerate those and bring them to the front, which is what we've had to do. And then as part of that sort of shorter term plan, what can I offer at level 4? What can I offer at level 3? And what can I offer at sort of at level 2? What does that look like? Beyond that, it's not too late to do what's called a business continuity plan, or a BCP. Really, that's just a flash way of saying, what do I do when it hits the fan? And even though it has hit the fan, it's not too late to be doing continuity planning, because we don't know how long this is going to go for. And as part of that process is contingency planning. So how do we operate? And so the business.govt.nz website actually has a really good summarized version of a business continuity plan. It's got 10 steps that you just work through. What it doesn't mention, actually, though, it doesn't talk about what's called a risk management plan, which should be part of a BCP. In other words, going through and saying, what are the risks, including a pandemic, but what other risks should I be thinking of in terms of my business? And then how do I assess those risks? And there's a very simple sort of formula where you take the likelihood or the frequency of a risk times its consequence or impact, and you can use that as sort of assessing the impact on your assessing the risk level for your business. And then it's how do I manage it and so forth. So business continuity, risk management, and just general business planning is a valuable working on your business at the moment. Okay, tip number 6: alternative revenue streams. Right, so many of us have seen either revenue grind to a halt or at least decrease for the next little while. So what else can you do? So first thing I thought was perhaps a SWOT analysis. It's a classic tool. It's been around forever. It's part of a business planning process. And, you know, if you go through it for your business and or possibly that your team or your key team, maybe even just looking at your strengths to start with, because at the end of the day, it's your strengths that provide the most bang for your buck. When you're thinking about allocating your scarce time, energy, and resources into working on your business or growing your business, it's you're going to get the best bang for your buck in terms of working on your strengths. And it's those strengths that are truly unique, which are your points of difference. And if we're going to be competitive and remain competitive, then surely we'll not only be working on our strengths, but on our unique strengths, because those are the things that sets us apart from our competition. And they're most reasons why people buy from us. So looking at our SWOT, and that's something you could do with your business partner or with your team as well. Now, there's a couple of books that we sort of reference when we talk about innovation in our programs. One's called The Innovator's Method by Nathan Furr and Jeff Dyer, and it's a wonderful book. There's about 3 or 4 in the series, and in this particular book, they talk about how to develop new products and services using this process of innovation. And in it is a central concept called the minimum viable product. And obviously we don't have time to get into this today, but essentially what it asks is, what is the minimum amount of resources that I need to launch a new product or service to market? So rather than saying, you know, I'm going to pour a whole lot of time, energy, and cost into developing something to the nth degree and then perfecting it and then taking it to market, I say, no, what's the minimum amount I need to get a customer to say, yes, I want that, or at least to put a deposit down? And it can be as simple as a marketing flyer advertising a new product or service that's coming. The exciting part comes when people suddenly do want it, and then you have to figure out how you're going to build it. But that's the whole premise of Kickstarter. So that's one. The other book is called Edge Strategy by Alan Lewis and Dan McCone. And now this book is all about innovating at the edges of your business. So rather than thinking about something entirely new that you've never done before and you don't really have any competency in it all, and you don't know if there's a market for it, this book advocates a looking at what are we really good at, what are our core competencies, and then what are the edges of that we haven't really explored and that we could try. And there's a whole range of different edges, but one of the simplest ones really come down to things about the customer journey. So if you think about when a customer starts with you and goes all the way through and ends with you, and acknowledging that could happen over a course of months or even happen over a course of minutes. But if you think about the customer journey from start to finish, and you ask yourself, how can I extend, or how can I get them earlier in the piece, and then how can I keep them for longer? And basically you're just extending the customer journey. So anyway, that's a great book. And there's another one called The Lean Startup as well, which I have a feeling is going to be another bestseller in the coming months as well. But I won't get into that, but I do recommend that book as well. How am I going for time, Rachel?
It's 2:30, so pretty good.
Any questions? Am I going too fast? All right. That's your turn. Right. Tip number 7. Should you stop your marketing? Rachel, our marketing guru.
So hopefully those of you, regardless of whether you're an essential service, you're working from home, or you're not trading, you haven't completely stopped your marketing. It's not a matter of stopping, it's potentially having a look at what you're currently doing or what you were doing before COVID-19 restrictions, and potentially modifying what you're doing and the messages that you're putting out there. There's probably a big question about whether you should be using your unpaid marketing and or your paid marketing. So unpaid marketing are things like your emails and social media. They're not actually costing you anything other than your time, versus paid advertising, which could potentially be your Google ads, advertising through Facebook, or even potentially you might be still running media advertising in printed or online forms. Whether you keep going with your paid advertising really comes back to your cash flow. Can you afford to continue that marketing activity? That's going to drive that decision for you. But I really want to press on you the importance of continuing your marketing activity. When we get out of level 4 restrictions and into level 3 and level 2, you still want to be top of mind for your customers. So you should still be interacting with them in some shape, way or form that's appropriate. So if you're an essential service or part of your business is an essential service, you should be communicating with your customers about what you're able to provide, how you're providing it, how you're keeping your staff safe, how you're keeping them safe with your safety protocols to make sure you're doing everything you should be doing with contact list, pickup and delivery, etc., etc. If you're continuing to work but you're working from home, let your customers know that. Engage with them on how you're keeping, keep engaging with them, but just be careful of not being tone deaf. You need to make sure your messages are appropriate for what we're all going through at this time. Potentially, if you get it wrong, you could alienate customers and damage your long-term brand. I do strongly believe the way people and businesses act at this time is going to form lifelong loyalty or lifelong hate. And I can say that from a personal point of view with the dealings I've had with some businesses. There are some that I will never use again, and that is a big consensus online in marketing groups and the like, that this is the time where you can build a really strong tribe with how you act with ethically and morally. So if you're working from home, you really need to make sure you're tweaking your messages, and it's all about providing support, encouragement and helpful information. No one wants to have sales messages slammed down their throat at this time. It's not appropriate. We don't want to feel that anyone's making a profit or out of the situation that we're in. So you just need to tread carefully. Probably the biggest group that's struggling right now are those that can't trade at all. And you're probably going, what the hell can I actually do with my marketing? But you really should be at least active on social media, sending out emails to your marketing database. A couple of reasons for that. A, you want to make sure that they know you still exist and that you can communicate with them when you can actually start training again in whatever shape, way or form. You want to make sure that they know and remember you so that when you can trade, they will come back and be return customers. Couple of good pages I've seen on social media that I think are doing quite a good job at this sort of thing. In Rotorua Capers, they've been putting up some quite good posts, potentially, memory posts of things that done previously that they've enjoyed, with comments on, we can't wait to be serving you coffee again. That whole thing, they're reinforcing how they serve their customers in a positive way. The other really good benefit of this is it's nice and light-hearted in your newsfeed, which is a good break from all the negative news articles, doom and gloom that we're seeing in our newsfeed. So it's just breaking that up, reminding them why you exist and that you're looking forward to be able to serve them again in the future. In Taupo, Baked with Love are doing a really good job in their social media space. Chris Jolly Outdoors are also, they're running a campaign and it's had huge reach for a promotion to win a cruise when they can become operative again. So all these things are just keeping people, keeping them top of mind and spreading the word. So probably really important that you're still active in those areas. Behind the scenes, now if you're not trading or limited trading, is a really good time to actually work on your marketing. As business owners and non-profit managers, we so often get bogged down in the doing that the actual planning behind our marketing, the work behind, always gets dropped to the bottom of the list because we don't have enough time on our hand. So if you've got some time, do the business planning Darren's talking about, but also look at your marketing planning. What is your brand story? What is your purpose? What is your why? Who is your target market? And really understand those things. On your target market, how is COVID-19 going to impact them specifically? Are they going to still be in a position to be able to afford your products and services once we get through COVID-19? You really need to understand that and how it's going to impact your sales and revenue in the future. Take the time to work on your online assets, work on your social media feeds, work on your website, and do an overhaul on your content on your website, and even look at your search engine optimization. Work on that so that you're more likely to come up in Google search results when people are ready to buy your product or service again. And that's probably the big marketing to-dos. So just be careful of your tone and try and be as helpful and supportive, as encouraging as possible in your messages.
Very good. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so if anyone's got any marketing related questions, then don't hesitate to drop them in the chat, or you can, of course, email us, and that's something we can, or Facebook as well, obviously. Okay, tip number 8, managing customer relationships. So this first little part's just more for business to business, or those perhaps with repeat customers. But now is also a good time to sit down and work out, like, who are my top 5, 10 or 20 customers. Now you'll probably know this. You could probably sit there and do this off the top of your head. And although you may need to sit down and think about this maybe just for the last year, or even the lifetime value. And that's something we do each year, is we sit down and work out who are our top 20 customers. Well, in fact, we sort them all for revenue by the last year, and then the lifetime value as well. And then I actually, personally, I just like telling customers in the top 10 what position they are each year from year to year. And if they're slipping down the rank, well, perhaps they should do some more work with us. But anyway, you can look at it not only from a revenue standpoint, but margin, because that's always an interesting one. What are they actually contributing margin to my business, and maybe even profitability, because sometimes the biggest customers from a revenue standpoint are perhaps the least profitable on the bottom line. And then beyond that, sometimes we have customers for a strategic reason, or their strategic value. And has that actually eventuated? We took them on for, perhaps they're going to introduce other customers to us, they're going to refer business to us. There are some sort of trophy account or some other, but has that actually eventuated, and is it worth continuing with them? So yeah, so sitting down, and then from there, for our top customers, what sort of contact strategy, or even better, what sort of relationship strategy should we have in place for each of them at the moment? So from a contact point of view, how often should I be talking to them? How can I be asking, how can we help them get through themselves as well? Because obviously the more of us who get through, the better. And then what actions can I do as a business to show my commitment to their business? Because it's the actions you take now and when we're in a crisis that make all the difference when you come out the other side. And I've used an example previously where I met a dairy farmer in Whakatane who was talking about their bank, and apologies, this is a banking story, but when I met them, they said, we will never ever change banks. Doesn't matter how good or how much the other banks try and persuade us, we'll never change. And it was simply because their banker, when Whakatane and the plains there flooded, their banker got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, went down and got the cows and helped milk them every morning for weeks on end. And they said, we'll never ever forget that. And as long as I think it was Lou was his name. As long as Lou's with you, then we will always bank with you. And it's that stuff is what customers remember. All right, and then if you're in retail, it's probably you can still contact your good customers. You can still be talking to them, but it's me also perhaps saying, how can I take my offering and change it, or how can I perhaps take it in some way online? How can I teach what I know online? A personal SWOT is not a bad thing to be doing in this current environment. You might have skills that you haven't used in the last 5, 10, 15 years, and they may be more marketable. Who knows? Okay, tip number 8. we need to stay connected with our staff. So if this is your first time with remote staff, it can be potentially quite daunting, particularly if we're used to seeing them every day, interacting with them every day, and all of a sudden, we're not. So the question is, how can you stay connected with your team, with your people, in a way that's supportive but not intrusive, right? Because it is very tempting when we've got people at home to be thinking, ooh, I wonder if they're outside doing gardening, or are they actually working for me? If they are meant to be working, should I? Is there a way I can take over their webcam and spy on them, or should I be installing some sort of key logging software? But we need to work obviously with a high trust model. So we can use, of course, things like Zoom and Skype and Microsoft Teams to stay in regular contact. Even a phone call, a regular phone call can make a difference. And we also need to be mindful that even if our business is continuing to trade well, our staff are fully occupied, or occupied as much as they can be, they may still have a family member, their partner may have lost their job, or they may be just really uncertain about their job, or they may just be feeling very uncertain about their own future. And so it's about how can we show reassurance without, of course, over-promising things as well. And being mindful that, most people experience change or significant change in the same way. There's this sort of change curve that we all go through. And the thing is, though, every individual experiences that curve at a different rate of speed. And, some may even get stuck on it. You can get, some people, there's a disbelief or a denial stage. And, for some of us, we just can't move beyond that. So we need to be mindful that all of our people may be somewhere on that change curve. And we all have different levels of resilience. And then lastly, on the staff piece, is there a way you can be connected with your team in a fun way? Could you hold a conference call at 4 o'clock with every opportunity for everyone to have a drink, have a dress up day, or a funny wig, I don't know, whatever. Fun, have a whatever. Is there anything way that sort of aligns with your culture and your values to keep your people connected in a fun way as well? All right. Last kind of formal tip, number 10. This sort of falls under the well-being. So, as business owners, we've chosen quite a difficult path for ourselves. It is not difficult to start a business or start a charity or a social enterprise. So, already we experience high levels of stress and uncertainty. And then on top of that, we've got this very complex, completely unknown pandemic to deal with as well. So our own emotional well-being is potentially at stake. And there's no way your business can ever operate to its potential if you're not well, or as well as you can be. And so I've just picked on three main things to be focusing on. So the first one is, and I've already mentioned it with your employees, is your level of resilience. What can you be doing to improve your level of resilience? And a lot of it's mindset. A lot of it's around seeing, obstacles as challenges, for instance, having a commitment to life, knowing that you can only control what you can control, seeing the current situation as temporary, not permanent, all these sorts of things as well. So what can you do to improve your resilience? Another one is motivation. How can you stay motivated and focused when you're in this unique situation? And there's this wonderful Japanese concept called ikigai that I've been talking about probably for almost the last 9 months. And it's really, it's I-K-I-G-A-I, ikigai. And it's basically your sweet spot in life and your business. And it's the intersection of what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. So you can Google this thing, and I even found a book on it. It's really neat. So if you can understand where you're at your happiest and most fulfilled, then you're going to be you're going to be highly motivated. and this might be a good time to go back and look at that. And then last one, positivity. You know, these things sound similar, may even sound the same, but they are distinct. And there's this wonderful, there's another great book actually on this called The Happiness Advantage, where the author talks about the fact that as a society, we kind of have it backwards, that we need to set goals, achieve those goals, then we can call ourselves successful, and then we're allowed to be happy. And it's almost like that it's a permission to be miserable right up until the point that you do achieve these goals. But we have it backwards, and the reason why we have it backwards is because our brains are hardwired to work in the opposite direction. In fact, it's been shown that we learn better, we have high levels of motivation, we are healthier, we live longer if we feel happier in the presence. So basically, this whole thing is about thinking about what can I do to raise my level of positivity wherever it's set right now, and feel a bit happier than I currently do. What can I do to do that? And if you do that, you're going to feel more motivated, and you're going to feel better, and you're going to be able to work harder to get through this. All right, so that's 10, and I see Rachel's been busy. Oh yeah, listing my books. That's nice. Thank you. So just kind of wrapping up this because it's quite a bit, and I haven't mentioned that we're recording this session as well. So we're going to do this every time we do this. So we'll get a link out to you. It'll be available Facebook and email, and on our website as well. Is that right, Rach? We'll
Yeah.
put it on the website. Yeah. So you'll be able to rewatch this particularly if I've gone a bit fast.
Or you need to go to sleep tonight.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If you've been struggling with insomnia, you can just play this back. So anyway, so we're all about execution. We passionately believe in taking action. Learning's great, but you've got to do something with it. And so from here, talk to your business mentor, talk to your coach, talk to a lawyer, talk to some professional advisor, speak to other business owners. You can get 100% subsidized support through something called the Regional Business Partner Network. If you haven't heard of it.
Can I just jump in? That's only for businesses. It's not available for non-profits.
Yes.
And probably one thing that we haven't covered today for non-profits is if you rely on grant money for any of your activity, you need to actually ring the grant organisations you normally apply to and see whether they're still issuing grants. Anything that's done from a gaming organisation, they are not issuing grants until the gaming machines are back up and running, which won't be until level 1 in all probability. So non-profits need to take that into account in their cash flows and in their business planning as well. Rotary Energy Charitable Trust is still issuing grants, so do talk to them if you're needing some money. I'm not too sure what their priorities are in terms of what organisations they're issuing grants to, but they're still issuing grants. Bay Venue, who's the other one? Bay Trust?
Yeah.
Bay Trust, I think, is still operating in this space. But I'm not sure of any others that are, because all the other ones I know are based on gaming machines and they're point blank not taking any applications. So if you rely on grants, you need to probably look at what other organisations you can tap into.
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps even talk to a bank. If you've never talked to a bank before as a non-profit and you've got a long established history and a stable revenue stream, maybe it's not 100% reliant on grants. It couldn't hurt to have a chat to them anyway, because perhaps they can help with some sort of temporary facility to help get you through. So it is a bit of a shame that you can't access that for non-profits, but if you're a commercial business, GST registered, then the government is basically paying for us and a lot of other people to provide support and assistance at 100% level. So there's details on our emails about that, or just send us a message and we can put you through to Linda and Phil who look after that. But,
sorry, and because there's people from all towns on this call, so it's Rick in Taupo, and it is Jason in Tauranga. But if you're interested in getting into that free subsidized coaching, just message me now, or even flick an email to grow@thefirestation.nz, and we'll be able to direct you to the right person for the town you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. So even if it's not us, maybe it's someone else that you prefer to work with, and then reach out and we'll put you in touch. So we're just going to end this part with what I normally ask our clients at the end of every really workshop and every coaching session. So some of you are on the call and you've heard me say this a million times, but what are you going to do? What are you going to execute on? What are you going to do based on what you heard today? What are you going to do in the next 7 days? And what are you going to do by the end of the month to move the business forward, to keep it going, and to make sure your family and your team are okay. It's what you're going to do that makes all the difference. And taking action can certainly be empowering. So that's our top 10 list. What was the name of the regional? Are you answering that question, Rach?
Sorry?
There's a
name
question.
of the region.
What was the name of the regional business support? It's the Regional Business
Partners Network.
It's got its own website. If you Google Regional Business Partners Network.
But each town has a different process to access the COVID-19. So,
as we well know, normally it's a 50% subsidy, but they've basically wiped it out and said, you guys don't have to pay it all. So, which is great, and hopefully they'll keep funding that. So, as I said at the start, we're going to run these each Tuesday. If we feel like there's a lot of demand, we possibly might run a second one each week, but we'll just see how we go. If you have specific questions or topics you'd like us to cover, let us know. The next few, I think, next one will definitely be around HR with the Employers and Manufacturers Association. We've done one with the banks. We're planning to do one on marketing. Any other topics? Potentially they're changing in the insolvency law as well. So we were looking at bringing a commercial lawyer on to talk about if you have to go down that route, what you might need to consider, or even how you negotiate with creditors. Or even one on diving more into generating new revenue and how do you grow your sales, basically. But if there's a topic that we can't do, then we'll find an expert to bring on the call. For those both based in Rotorua or been to Rotorua X, our charity, we are working away on a online version of our Connect event. So we haven't gone completely to sleep. I'm just on the lookout for an inspirational speaker at the moment. But we hope to be back potentially next Wednesday evening with an event, but we'll keep you in the loop on that as soon as we've got someone locked down. But that hopefully will be an opportunity to connect as well with your fellow business owners. And that's us. Hang on, I've got a question here. Any suggestions if your landlord won't negotiate on rent? I know Rachel's going to want to say something.
I'm not happy with a lot of landlords. So it comes down to your rental agreement and what's in there, unfortunately. In Australia, they are actually looking at giving guidelines, and I'm not too sure how they're going to do it, but they're actually going to put into law what landlords need to do in this situation, because they feel landlords need to shoulder some of the impact as well as the tenants. Really hard. Talk to your lawyer. It comes down to your individual legal agreement and lease agreement, unfortunately. So there's a clause in the standard Law Society lease agreement, which some landlords get rid of around in this type of situation, and then clause 27.
Yes. So I would suggest first of all reread your lease. That's what we did, and it reminded me of some things I'd forgotten. Talk to a good lawyer about it, because there may be something you can do. And then it might come back to also how long you've got left. Like if your lease has not got long to run, then that would put you in a reasonable, strong position, I would think, because we're going to be heading into recession, and how bad is anyone's guess, but I don't think it's going to be a short, easy one by any stretch of imagination. So, and the way we're operating now is going to become the norm for a lot of businesses, I think, going forward. So from a landlord perspective, if I owned a building, I would be really concerned right now about my ability to even have a tenant, let alone what I can charge them. So if somebody is not willing to negotiate at all, I would be signaling to them that you'll be certainly looking around when your lease comes up and asking the question, why should I stay? I mean, that's just my personal view. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to be spoilt for choice. And for those of us based in tourism-heavy towns, it's going to be even worse. If we think we've had a high level of vacancies in Rotorua, it's going to be horrendous. So, yeah.
So I'm not too sure who asked that question. I can't see.
Oh, no, it was privately to me.
Yeah. So the other way is, I'm not too sure how you asked for the rent relief or discount. But if you haven't done it in this way, go in as more of it's a partnership. We both want to survive this. How can we help each other through? So, when we went into level 4 lockdown and we had clients cancelling all over the show, Darren and I went through and did a lot of the things we've discussed today. I think we did all of them actually. And that included talking to every single one of our suppliers. Obviously, rent for us was our biggest one. It took, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks for him to come to the party. But I spoke to all of them saying, look, if we all pay each other a little bit, then we're spreading the money through the economy and we've all got a better chance to survive. So rather than pay nothing, I want to pay you what I can afford. And if we all took that on board, especially for smaller businesses, we've got a greater chance to actually surviving this and getting through and coming out the other side. So try and approach it that way if you haven't. Otherwise, yeah, really sorry that you've got an a-hole as a landlord.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh goodness. Let's just had a note here. Also get landlords or businesses to apply to the council. Yes, for a rates deferral option. It won't write off the rates, but it will allow more time. The option for deferral of payments for up to 12 months for those who meet the criteria will primarily target tourism, hospitality, commercial, accommodation, and retail sectors. Yes, that's a good point. So perhaps if you ask your landlord if they haven't talked to their local council to do so, because they may be able to do something around the rates, which might take a bit of pressure off as well.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about Taupo or Tauranga, but Rotorua Lakes Council have agreed to a rates relief or rates deferment in some instances. So that's available for Rotorua businesses potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that little update came directly from a very trusted source, you could say, but I won't say who it is. All right. So if there's no other questions on anything we've covered or anything else, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on this and listening. It's obviously our first one, so we're still feeling our way through the format. We really appreciate your time. I know that every time I do this, I get nervous, but I also get to the end of it and it gives me another reason to or focus for the day. So I really appreciate you dialing in, because otherwise it would have been just Rachel and I talking to each other again. But yeah, hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday afternoon for our HR update, and look forward to that. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, everyone.